Welcome to CAM Matters, Condos, Co-ops, HOAs, and beyond. Betsy Barbieux is an informational leader in Florida on community association living, rights, and obligations. She is an expert on the rights and obligations of owners as well as the association. If you live or are planning to live in the state of Florida, there's a good chance you'll be part of a community association. And by the end of this show, you'll know a little bit more about community associations and why they matter.
And welcome to the December 2024 episode of CAM Matters. I am Suzanne, your host, with Betsy Barbieux and her wonderful husband, Jim. We've got a special episode today. But before we jump in, I want to encourage you to look back at the last 11 episodes. Betsy has spent a lot of time and energy giving some great wisdom in CAM Matters over this last year. So we'd love for you to watch them, to like them, to share them. Hi, Betsy and Jim. It's good to see you. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Well, Betsy, first of all, I noticed that you don't normally have a partner with you. You have the partner with a capital T-H-E. Let's talk about that.
This is Jim Cornell, my husband, and he works for Good News Global. We're still trying to learn the new name. It formerly was Good News Global, Good News Jail and Prison Ministry.
Okay.
And he is the chaplain at the Lake County Detention Center, also known as the jail. So he goes to jail every day.
I have a daily release.
And he gets out every day. Yeah.
Jim, I mean, I bet that has given you a world of wisdom. I bet you've seen things and you're willing to just kind of pass them on and share that information.
Well, I don't know.
Where on the wisdom may be the question mark.
Betsy, what is it that Jim has that will bring the CAM world and his world together?
Well, let's go back just a little bit. He's also the associate pastor at our church, and he is our music minister.
Okay.
He is very musical and has, over the last 15 years or so, on a position as the chaplain at the Lake County Detention Center. Mm. But for a lot of people who know that we've been married only about 3.5 years, and he has some observations about CAM industry, and he thinks that there's some things that would make our lives easier.
I think that sounds pretty good. You know, Jim, you have an interesting perspective because you're hearing from the CAM queen. And you're hearing her gripes, but you're hearing her wins too. So you're getting both sides. So this comes with 3.5 years of really intimate conversations about the struggles and the wonderful things that can happen.
Yeah, I've been on a crash course for CAMs.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about what's the first thing that you observed. How do you feel like you can contribute to maybe helping with boards, for one thing?
Well, I think understanding how the boards function, as I observe, it seems like there's a significant confusion. Or I have a lawyer friend of mine that I quote, "Perception's 100%, don't confuse them with a fact."
Ooh.
And so often that becomes some of the difficulties. This one thinks this one thinks that, and then the continuity from one board group to another. And I think that it disconnects. Very similar to boxcars of a train. It's not a train, it's individual boxcars until they're connected. And once they're connected, they can sort of pull together and operate, function.
Supposed to.
Yeah,
That's a beautiful picture, though. Yeah, when they're connected, they're supposed to pull together.
And I think that you observe, people do get their personal feelings, their emotions, they like what they don't like. We're going to do this, we're going to do that. Mm-hmm. And I think for CAMs as well as boards, then you have a lot of stress, you have a lot of frustration, you have a lot of anger. The frustration becomes something more than just something you can lay down.
Mm.
Now we have some board members who run with an agenda. Mm. And so there isn't really an honest player to begin with, because their agenda is, I'm going to lower the assessments, or I'm going to fire the manager, or want my house painted first, or my building. And so when you come in with a personal agenda, then it's going to derail the train.
Yeah.
And one of the things is that I hear Jim say when he gets a chance to comment is consistency, and some of the consistency, whether you're in ministry, whether you're at work, that consistency comes from politics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think a foundation becomes important. If you have, listen to Betsy, she talks about the documents and how those are supportive and how boards to respond to those versus the individual preferences. And I begin to see that if you add to your policies, you add in policies into your documents, then you begin to get long-term, can I use the word legacy for a better, for lack of a term? And so one's investment, group of people, one's investment will become useful to others. And that is kind of the train thing. That's how you begin to move and actively change the direction of your board.
One of the things that I hear or observe is that board members literally sit there and wring their hands and say, what do we do? 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 And they'll call me and they'll say, what do we do? And I'll say, well, what's your policy? And they're blank. They don't have a policy. How do we get things on the agenda? How do we do that? I said, well, what's your policy? You know, how do we let owners speak? What do we do? What do we do? Well, what's your policy? Any of the times that Jim sits in, he throws that at him and says, what's your policy? Policy will
Save yourself.
It'll save you.
I'm going to make a connection here and tell me if I'm just completely off base. I'm going to say that I see a similarity between running a board and prison ministry in the way of frustration with communication, that both people who are in prison and people who are running a board and part of a board really sometimes I think have the right heart in mind, have good intentions, but communicating what they're really feeling isn't always the easiest. And Jim, I mean, how do you suggest, based on what you've seen with communication of prisoners and saying, you know what, the most important thing is getting the final result, not having the last word. The most important thing is expressing yourself and being clear in a professional way. How do you make that connection between boards and how people in prison are communicating?
Both are dysfunctional.
That's kind of, I was letting you say that, yes.
Well,
tell me more.
We deal with people with chronic problems and difficulties, and they have learned that the louder they speak or yell or talk, then the more they get. And they've learned that as little children, they've learned it as adults, and the consequence is the more I make this noise, then you're going to back off and you're going to let me do what I want to. And I see some of those parallels as board members get a little bit louder and get a little bit more frustrated, get a little bit less congenial.
And owners too.
Yes.
Yeah. We spend a lot of time with Betsy talking about communication and trying to get points across in a clear, concise, respectful manner. And I give you a lot of props for both of you working in the arenas that you do. I think it's really important and really good work.
Well, it's certainly interesting. And it's a little bit of an upside down thinking where I work. The things that I think would be normal, really is misunderstood, or you kind of have to throw out your thinking, your normal thinking, and begin to understand what the environment presents. And there's victimization, there's addictions, there's attitudes, there's and some are not founded. Some are just, this is the way I think and I'm going to do this. I find it another thing interesting is that I see people on boards who have done wonderful in their work environment. And it seems that they lose their ability to think clearly once they get on the board and not serve as objective when they would have been in their workplace.
That's very interesting. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that is?
It has to do with money. has to do with my property and my money. Because I've observed the same people on a United Way board or a Kiwanis board or an Altrusa board. I've observed the same people in social and civic organizations, and they don't act the same on a homeowner association board.
Wow. Maybe I'm naive, but I'm blown away by hearing this.
It feels really good to be on United Way and raise a whole lot of money and give it away.
Yeah.
But it does not have the same feeling on an HOA or a condo board where you're trying to get money from other people to do what should be done, which is not what they want done.
Right. Wow.
It's entirely different.
Again, those
fascinating
policies and procedures become a, can I use the word safety net or a boundary?
Mm-hmm.
And how does a board establish those boundaries that are healthy, useful, and productive?
Mm.
And I think the conflicts that happen just cause people to back off. I'm just going to quit, or if I don't get what I want.
Mm-hmm.
Again, if you have policies, procedures, and the thought process is happening in communication, I think that falls both on the leadership of the board, meaning your presidents, as well as your CAM.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I think I'm going to shift a little. I think CAMs live in a world of, we're at the behest of the board.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, I've got to, whatever the board does, I've got to do.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that if a policy or procedure is established and that is carried in and through, it becomes a foundational position. And then the CAM can look and say, well, we have these policies and we have these procedures. And once they're established, legacy begins to happen.
Wow. Once policies and procedures are established, legacy happens. That's good.
And then you have consistency.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have one board that's lenient and lets owners do whatever they want to do. And then the next board comes in and the pendulum swings the other way.
Right.
They come down with a hammer and they are nitpicking at every little blade of grass that has grown too tall.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same kind of consistency in parenting.
Okay.
That if the parents are consistent, which in this case is the board from year to year to year,
Mm-hmm.
then there is more civility and peace in the family and in our community.
That's profound. Having those policies and procedures written down sounds like not the last step, but the first step of peace and unity.
Well, in what I do, policies and procedures are necessary.
Right.
And many times they're reactive. In other words, we have this policy because this happened.
Right.
And so often, I suppose that can be negative, but if you place those in the proper order and work through them and communicate them to, I think, the community through the board and out to the greater population within that community, I think people would see the normality of things that could be helpful. It would take away the conflict or the heated discussions.
Yeah.
Well, and similar to that, I remind the managers and the manager applicants in the classes that the law that we're studying, law is reactive. It's there because something went wrong.
Mm-hmm.
We have policies, and the statute gives the board dozens of opportunities to create policies, keep things from going wrong, and they don't create them, so things go wrong.
Right. That's so good.
Why would I blow something up just because I can, or because I don't have some direct? No, it's literally landmines that are made either by previous board by individuals,
Yeah.
and if you don't know where to step, then it's going to go off. And again, legacy does not lend itself to that kind of leadership. Inconsistent, I bet.
Betsy and Jim, I want to take a quick break and come back, but I want to say that this is why these shows are so important, because Betsy is on the front line seeing these things that happen and can prevent a lot of wars from happening. You know, we need this content shared and just consumed. So you don't necessarily have to step on every mine. She's seen it. She's experienced it. She's heard the stories, you know. So, all right, we'll be right back.
Are you ready for a new career? Do you have skills or interest in management, real estate, construction, maintenance, accounting, strategic planning, project management, budgets, human resource management, lawn and landscaping, pool services, or any other expertise needed to operate a community association? If you do, community association management could be for you. For more information, feel free to email Betsy at betsy@floridacamschools.com or visit the Florida Cam Schools website at www.floridacamschools.com. Florida Community Association Management continues to grow. Career opportunities abound.
And welcome back to Cam Matters. It's the December 2024 edition, and we have Betsy Barbieux with her spouse and soulmate Jim. We're glad that you're both here. We were talking about really policies and procedures, and when it boils down, I hear you saying that boundaries are what's really important. You want to expound more on that?
Want you or me?
Well, I'll jump in. If you consider where I work, we have significant boundaries.
You have to. It's a matter of life and death.
There are those who don't play well with others, and they're, committed into a spot where they live and stand
by themselves.
Yeah, by themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I think boundaries need to be understood on both sides. I would suggest that the CAMs who struggle at times don't understand the boundaries. It's a little bit like trying to keep your balance on a rolling log. And that, in turn, somebody will spin it faster so that you end up falling or failing. Mm-hmm. And then you don't know quite how to trust those individuals. I also think policies, procedures for legacy, the boundaries become important. For me to be able to look at somebody and say, that's not okay. No, you need to stop here, or to utilize ways in which you can maybe take the steam out of the heat out of the conversation.
Jim, here's the difference, though. You have a role of authority, and I think sometimes the board, from what Betsy talks about, doesn't feel like they have the right. It's almost like they're working for the owners. Like I see that if they had the same attitude,
right?
Both. Well, both.
Okay.
Both. Yeah. Because what I see to tag on to that on both ends, I see CAMs that are not confident in their knowledge. I see CAMs that are not confident in their position and won't step in when they really need to step in. But I also see boards that won't let them. Hire a professional, but then they won't let them do their job. They don't seek advice from their CAM. Don't understand hiring a professional and not seeking advice from them. Mm-hmm. But then, to your point, Suzanne, I see boards that think that they are supposed to represent the wishes of the people. Mm-hmm. For anyone who's been in my classes, I spend a lot of time reminding boards and managers that the board is there to fulfill the mandates of the documents.
Right.
The property, maintain it, and enforce the restrictions on the governing on the owner's use rights. They're not there as a representative form of government to represent the wishes of the people. So everybody stayed in their lane and could just do their job. If boards would stay in their lane and do their job to fulfill the mandates of the documents in the statute, and if CAMs would step up and realize they are professionals and they've been hired because of their professionalism, and if boards would let them do it, then to me, there's your legacy.
Wow.
Again, you're going back to the boundaries and what that should look like. I think boundaries don't always have to be rigid.
Right.
They can. A screen porch is a boundary. Mm-hmm. And still let all of the air in and through and keep the bugs out. And now I think that many times CAMs as well as boards need to figure out how to let that through, but to keep the keep the bugs out.
Yeah, keep the bugs out.
Somebody's going to hear this and think, oh my goodness, they're sick.
They're probably going to go, oh, now I relate to what he's talking about. I get it now. Betsy, let's talk about some of the topics that you wanted to touch on.
Some of the policies that you can create, and I'm going to turn my head here for just a second.
Yeah.
How do you handle owners' inquiries? What is the policy for that?
Mm.
How do you handle owners' requests to access records? One of the things in both of those is the word written, that a written inquiry or a written request to access records, the
Mhm.
board needs to define written.
Wow.
Is written a piece of paper sent in the mail or hand delivered, or
Is
is
it a
written
text?
an email or
Yeah.
a text?
Yeah. Wow.
Because what's going to happen, and this is where Jim has to be consistent at the detention center, is that I can imagine that an owner that I really like
Yeah.
sends me an email and says, can I have a copy of such and such? And I just email it to him.
Mhm.
But then another owner that is a
Pain.
Problematic.
problem,
Yeah.
I will respond. I might respond to that email and say, you have to send me a letter by certified mail.
Oh, what's your policy? Yeah.
So you can't
That's
be
so good.
arbitrary. You can't look like you're jerking people around, even
Betsy, that is
even
such
if
a
you want
perfect
to. Even if you want
example.
Oh,
to.
my.
Even if you want to, yes.
Even if you want to, you can't. And so there are other policies like owners' right to speak at a meeting.
Hmm.
Do they identify themselves as wishing to speak? Where do they stand? Do they hold the microphone? Do they come to the lectern and speak to the board? How many minutes do they have?
Mm.
Can they share their minutes? Because others will say, I'll give you my 3 minutes. I'll give you my 3 minutes. I'll give you mine. No sharing. No sharing of minutes.
Wow.
You can also have policies for removing board members, not board members, but removing officers from the board. You can have policies on how and who sets the agenda for the board meetings.
Mhm.
There are some communities that need policies for owners to add things to a board agenda, which is not really what owners get to do.
Right.
It's a board meeting, but there can be a policy to accommodate those owners who are concerned about a certain thing and want it added to the board. So those are just a few.
So I'm going to throw an idea out there and you're going to be like, that's a horrible idea. Don't ever bring it up to me again. And I hope I can get it out of my head. But what about the idea of someone like Betsy setting a policy and going, this is a generic starting point for CAMs to begin at and then adjust it as you like. Everybody gets 3 minutes. This is the written policy. Da, 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 da. Is there something like that already created, or what is your general thought on that? Do they have is part of the struggle how they win?
Yes, no, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here
I'm not sure how to answer that one.
I'm sitting here looking at,
There are templates, I'm sure.
I am sitting here looking at a template
See?
Okay.
that is about 80 pages long. And I have in it pretty much every place in the statute that says that the board can create policies. And I've not written the policy, but I have put the statute and given the board members a place to write some notes to start beginning to create that policy. About 6 years ago, this was the continuing ed class that managers had. And this was the exercise that I had them doing at their roundtable discussions. And maybe
Of course you already thought of this.
you know,
I wanted to make it my idea.
It's not your idea, it's mine. I did it already. But I'm wondering if maybe it's time to bring this course back.
Yeah.
The summit
Wow.
next year. I wonder.
Yeah. Let's dive right into that because I mean, look, I know Christmas is coming, but August is going to be here fast.
Yes.
You have dates set already?
I do.
Oh, my goodness.
I have the community building, our usual place reserved for Thursday and Friday, August 14th and 15th.
Okay.
Miss Debbie has already said she will cook.
Oh, my.
Wonderful.
And by the way, the cookies they'll hurt you.
They're so worth it. So worth it.
And Jim always attends, so people can come and meet him in person.
That's
That's scary.
But the other thing that I will probably end with is that I have assigned Jim to be our school chaplain
That sounds like I'm 3 years old.
That is
No, it does not. It does not.
no, sounds like
he
there's a
is-
place for a lot of prayer and
Well,
yeah.
no, not just that, but
Yep.
for people to talk to. For managers who are struggling with those boundaries, with those hurt feelings, with those horrible situations that some of them get thrown into, Jim is available to listen.
Wow.
And whoever he talks to, I'm not going to know what it was.
Sure.
He's a pastor. He can be confidential.
That
But
is such
if
a great
anybody
idea.
needs to talk to Jim from a spiritual point of view, then he is available because I've made him. So that
I
he
even
can,
have a name tag.
I do.
Oh, it's official.
Yeah, he won't wear it. But there are
What a
camps
great
that are
idea.
distressed.
Yeah.
There are camps that are distressed. And sometimes you just need someone other than a family member
Mhm.
to. And if you are a believer, you want to talk to somebody who is also a believer. So he's available. You can contact me and I'll have him contact you.
Well, there's also, even for those who aren't in a spiritual depth or something along that line, sometimes you just have to unpack it. You have to, because the pressure is up. And where's that pressure valve
Yeah.
for them? And sometimes just offloading it, being able
Feels
to
better
say,
to talk about.
yeah.
That's
And of course, you have to think about styles of thinking and how each person now deals with it. And
mhm.
being wise with that and listening appropriately. Sometimes asking really hard questions. Some folks don't like that.
What a beautiful addition to the end of the year. It makes so much sense. Welcome to the team. It's a big hug.
He's got a
It's big
title.
hug.
It says chaplain, but he won't wear it.
That's all right. That's all right. Well, both of you are so loved and appreciated. Thank you, Betsy, for what you pour in through the whole year. You put a lot of thought and time into these shows. And, I had asked in the beginning, please share them, but also give them a rating because that gets a little bit more activity, a little more traffic for each of the episodes as well. So you are loved. Merry Christmas. We
Merry
don't say Happy
Christmas.
Holidays here. We say Merry Christmas. And God bless you. Betsy, Jim, we'll talk next year. Have a wonderful new year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to CAM Matters. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. For more information, feel free to email Betsy at betsy@floridacamschools.com or visit the Florida Cam Schools website at www.floridacamschools.com. Information provided on this show is general in nature and does not constitute legal advice. Please contact a licensed attorney for your specific situation.